Hello, everybody. Hello, Luke. Hello, Aaron. Welcome to the very first episode of Art-o-ree.
Yay!
How's everybody doing?
We're doing good. How are you doing, Gina?
So, I'm good. Aaron, do you want to tell us what this is all about? What's this week about?
Yes. So for people who have been watching, we've been doing every day at 2 p.m. Central Time. We've been doing what we call Trek at 2, where we take a virtual trek through the pages of Boys Life magazine. So we welcome all of our regular Trek at 2 audience. We have a very special treat for you guys. We're doing something a little bit different this week, Gina. We are doing what we have called Art-o-ree. Brilliant name by our director, came up with that name, by the way. And we're going to talk all week long about art. We've got art experts, we've got real artists who are going to come on, and we've even got an opportunity to earn one of the requirements of the Art Merit Badge if you play along at home. It's a 5-day event, right, Gina? Every day, Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. every day, we're going to talk about a different medium and different aspects of art. Today is sort of the introduction, and that's why we have our brand new friend who we just met, Luke, with us online. Luke, how's it going?
It's going really well, and I'm excited to be here.
Thanks so much for joining us. Luke is in North Carolina right now, everybody. And Luke, tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe real quick, and your background in art.
Absolutely. So I work at an art museum called the Cameron Art Museum in Wilmington, North Carolina. And I also teach online classes in art appreciation and literature. And I've been an art lover for a long time. I used to also be in the Boy Scouts way back when, Troop 398 in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. So
Ooh, shout out Troop 398.
Absolutely, yeah. So you're really like, we could not have created a more perfect person to come on with us to talk about art today, Gina. Good job finding Luke, by the way.
Oh, no, I think you found him. I think he's been our art expert for a while now. I think he's a source for one of our awesome articles on art, the Art Merit Badge, in the past. So thanks for joining us, Luke. Luke's going to talk to us a little bit about art appreciation, and he has a very fun game that we're all invited to play along. I know a lot of troops are mentioning that they're here in the comments. We're going to give you guys a shout out later on, but we're all here for the Art Merit Badge, right? And in a few minutes, we're going to be embarking on a sketch. It's going to be a computer sketch and then a pencil and paper sketch that you guys can draw along with. And that goes toward earning requirement 4, potentially, if you show that to your merit badge counselor. But I think we should talk about requirement 1. It starts us at the basics. And requirement 1 of the Art Merit Badge tasks you to discuss the following with your counselor. So let me pose this one to you guys first. What is art? And what are some of the different forms of art? Aaron, I don't think you're qualified to answer.
It's a perfect question for the guy sitting right there. Luke, it's hard to point the right here. Luke.
I like the pointing. That's great.
Yes, exactly.
So Luke, what is art?
That's a great question. And if you go to art museums and you ask art experts, you're going to probably get a lot of different answers about what art is. There's one way that I like to think about art that it might be helpful, and it's a recreation of what's important to you in reality. So often it's like the stories of your life that you want to tell. Something happens to you, something you do, and you say, oh, wow, I'd like to share that. And then when you share that, you could maybe even invent some new aspects to it, but it's still a reflection of what happens in your life. So that's the way I like to think of art, as stories that can connect to your life.
That's a perfect answer. And then this one is really tricky because I don't think we can even probably touch on it, but I'd love to hear your take on what are some of the different forms of art, just some of them.
Yeah, very quickly. I would say, like, there are, so if we talk about different forms of art, maybe there's sculpture, maybe there's painting, maybe there's illustration, there's drawing, and those are some of the basic forms. You can make art out of clay and make it into a portrait, or you can take some watercolors and paint the outdoor scenes that you're seeing, or you can take some pencils and draw the faces of people around you.
Yeah, that's perfect. And it's so interesting because like this week we're breaking up sketching and it's just sketching, but there's so many different ways to do it. I know we've talked about computer sketches, pen and pencil sketches, watercolors, all kinds of things. I mean, we'll talk more about that later, but pretty interesting. And that's only, we're talking about like, what's the right term for it? Like, we're talking about art on a canvas or art on some kind of we're not even talking about all different kinds of art that exists, like music and poetry and everything else in the world. So very interesting.
Yeah, visual art.
Yeah. I love the idea of art as like storytelling. I am a writer and I write stories for Boys Life. And Gina is actually an excellent writer herself. She writes a lot of our stories and writes a lot of our digital content. And we tell stories through words. I wish I could draw. I can't, but I wish I could. But I love the idea of art telling stories just like a written word, right? Just like a written piece.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the way I often think about looking at an artwork is not just looking, but reading the artwork and using your words to describe what you see that's happening in a similar way that you'd read a story that somebody wrote. And I bet, Aaron and Gina, when you write your stories, you probably imagine some scenes in your mind's eye. And so you are helping us to see what's going on, the images in your mind when you write about it. Now, I think with this week, what's going to happen is everybody's going to get an opportunity to practice some and develop some new skills, just like you might develop some writing skills to help you create a story. So this week, you'll develop some drawing skills to help you develop a visual story.
That's exactly right. We're lucky too with Boys Life, we get to incorporate illustrations and comics throughout the magazine. So we get multiple art forms involved. And a lot of times our fiction has illustrations and we're very, very lucky to be able to actually talk to some of those illustrators this week and do some sketching with them. Michelle mentions that art is a way to express yourself. Allison says the same thing. I think that that's a really good way of putting in succinctly what you just said. Aaron says art is expression in physical or audible form. That's also an interesting definition. We love your definitions.
Yeah, whatever you create comes from you and is your voice. And your voice is going to be different than anybody else's voice. So you get a better sense of who you are by creating art.
I love it.
And I wonder, Luke, what you think. Like, I kind of half jokingly say I can't draw because I do. I mean, I love to draw as a child, and you just that sense of wonder and sitting down with crayons. You know, I have wonderful memories that I never felt like I was good at it. But I wonder what you would say to a kid who said, "I'm not very good at drawing," because it's probably just a matter of finding your voice, right? Just like I remember one time a friend of mine, I said I can't sing, and she said, "No, you just have to find your voice." It's probably kind of the same thing with drawing, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and what's going to happen is when you start to draw, and you sometimes you see expert drawers or expert artists, and you think, "Wow, I could never do that." But no matter how expert somebody becomes, they're never going to be able to make the kinds of marks or come up with the kinds of things that you come up with. And the first step is just feeling like this is me. And I'm confident about what I'm going to put down on this paper. And then if you want to develop more skills to be able to shade or to look at a human face and draw it more realistically, that's a direction you're welcome to go into if that interests you. But the important thing is that voice that is creating is yours, and there's no one else that has that voice but you.
That's really nice, especially when we talk about this next requirement 1B, which is the importance of art to humankind. And I'm sure that's a really big question, but I would love to narrow it down and talk about what's the importance of art for, let's say, a Cub Scout age or a Scouts BSA aged kid.
Yeah. So the importance of art for Cub Scout or Scout BSA. And I would say it would be a way to put down what's important to you. You can express yourself and then you can think about it. It's a way to think about your life. What matters to me in my life? What are the fun things? Do I want to think about, the things that are sad in my life? Do I want to think about the happy moments? Do I want to think about the silly moments? And when you think about those things, you can decide that's what I want to draw. Or no, I'd rather not draw that. But it's a way of looking at your life, about the experiences you have, and deciding what matters to you.
I love that. So just a reminder for everybody at home, in about 10 minutes, we are going to have the illustrator of Lion Pride, Joey Ellis, on, and he's going to show us how to sketch with Photoshop. There's a digital iteration of Lion Pride right up there right now. And then afterwards, he's going to show us how to sketch with a pencil, just in case you don't have Photoshop handy. I have one more question for Luke that I think is going to lead us into a fun game you guys can play along with us at home. I'm very excited about it. He totally gets how we like to do things at Boys Life. Of course, a game, right? Okay, so requirement 1C of the Art Merit Badge wants you to discuss with your counselor, what does art mean to you and how can it make you feel? So that's tough, but I think you brought something along with you to help illustrate how art can make us feel. Yeah. And I brought in 5 artworks by some of artists I really, really like, including one that is maybe my favorite American artist and who worked with Boys Life magazine for years and years and years. I think over 50 years he made art for Boys Life magazine, and his name is Norman Rockwell. And one way that I like to kind of start to feel and to think about an artwork is by playing this game. And every time I go into an art museum with friends, this is a game I like to play. We look at the artwork, and you know what we do? We don't look at the title of the artwork that the artist gave it or the museum gave it. We come up with our own title for the artwork. And that's a way of helping us see the story of what's happening. So Aaron and Gina, I'd love to invite you to play this game where we'll look at an artwork very quickly and you just come up with your own title for it. What do you think? I want to play, and I also wanted to say something you said off screen, that these works of art remind you of your time in the Scouts.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
Absolutely. Yeah, so a lot of what you can think about when you're deciding what it is that you want to illustrate, what is it that you want to draw, or what are the things in your life that are important to you. And so when I think back to my time as a Scout, these are some of the kinds of moments, whether with friends or going out in nature or speaking to people that I may not normally get to speak to because I have a chance to be in the Scouts. Those things I can see in art, and then if I want to, I can create an art too. So, Gina, I'm glad you brought that up, and maybe I'll share very briefly how the artwork that I'm showing you that are going to be from artists that have been dead for 200 years actually speaks to me about my time in Scouts and might speak to all the Scouts out there about experiences they have in Scouting.
Yeah, I love that. Aaron, do you think we should ask the folks at home to play this game along with us, or do you want it just to be me and you only?
I think we should absolutely ask the folks. They're probably better at this than we are. So I would love to know. I would love to get ideas from them, and I'm excited about this. This is fun. Luke told us just before we went on that he had this idea for the game, and I immediately went, "Yep, I'm in. Sounds good." Yep. So yeah, let's do it.
So yeah, Scouts at home, play with us. We're going to be titling we're going to come up with our own titles for very famous pieces of art, and Luke is going to lead us through that.
All right, great. So here's the first one, and you notice this is a cover from Boys Life magazine, but look at the cover and see what's happening and come up with your own title for this painting, for this illustration. Okay. What would you call it?
It looks like we've got, I'm trying to kind of describe what we're seeing here. It looks like a Boy Scout, and the person next to him appears to be like a sailor, and then they're talking to an older gentleman who I think, Gina, I'd be curious to know what you think. I think he's sharing some sort of expertise with them. He's showing them maybe where he's been, telling them some sort of story from his life. I bet he has a lot of good stories to tell. And he's telling these 2 younger folks here with him about maybe an adventure he went on. Look, there's a cane there on the chair he's sitting in. So he's obviously, been through, maybe he's older. He's been through a lot, maybe.
Okay, do you want to hear some of the names people are coming up with at home yet? Or do you want to guess?
Yeah.
Do you want to come up with your own first? Okay, so we've got... Okay, Leslie says memories.
Oh.
Nice.
I can see that.
Yep.
Maria says the fortune teller.
Ooh.
Oh, okay.
I like that.
That's a little bit of a different twist than what I was thinking, but I like it. It's cool.
Yeah, it's kind of like he can see maybe where they're going to go in their lives or something.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
how I like that.
Yep.
Okay, Cub Scout Pack 422 says Old Man in the Sea.
Yep.
That's a good play on a title.
Sailor back there. Yep.
We've got another Looking into the Future. We've got Sea Life. We have The Pioneer. Aaron's literal. He says, Old Man points at the North Pole.
Yeah, I guess he kind of is. Yeah, it's true.
Sailor's Times. Sailor's Tales. Times at Sea. Gaining Wisdom. I like that. That's kind of where my head's going.
Right.
The Globe and the Sailor. Show Them the World. Let me do one more.
I like that.
I love this one. Here's my favorite so far. The Navigator.
That's really cool. Yeah. Yeah. He's got, the older gentleman has some sort of hat on that makes you think he also maybe has some kind of maritime experience or something like that. So yeah, I like the idea. The Navigator, that's really good actually. Yeah.
Well, man, this
Gina,
is really
what's yours?
hard.
What's yours, Gina?
I would want to go. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I would go with something. So this is funny, Luke, because Gina and I, back when we used to work together in an office, we would sometimes sit down and brainstorm ideas for the cover of Boys Life magazine or for individual stories. And I would probably go along with something like the idea of passing along knowledge, or stories from the past, or ancient stories from the sea, or ancient stories of adventure from the sea, or sea adventures, or something like that is probably where the direction I would go with.
Right.
I was going to go with something like looking back to look ahead. It's like you kind of have to look back at what we've done to see where we're going.
That's good. These are all great titles. I'm loving the titles that I'm hearing in the chat. And it's just immediately giving words to what you're looking at gets you more into the story. Who is he? Right. What's going on? And it invites you to look more closely. So you want to hear my title?
Yes.
I'm going to call it Memorial Day. And it makes me think of listening to the stories of older scoutmasters, maybe of the times that they were in danger, and maybe even out at war. And sometimes I think, when you think of Memorial Day, we celebrate all those who defend our freedom and have in the past, and we want to remember them. And maybe sometimes the best way of remembering them is by speaking to them and hearing their memories.
I love it.
Great. Yeah, that's awesome.
Okay, what else have we got?
All right, let's see. Okay, just off the top of your head, what would you call this one?
Okay.
So this one, it looks like you can't really tell the age of him, but I'm going to say an adult, a young adult maybe, and it looks like he has summited a peak or something and has a really interesting view, I think, right? It looks like he's above the clouds.
I'm saying view from above.
Yeah, I was going to say view above the clouds, or the view from above the clouds, or something along those lines. That could be like mist or something like that, hanging in the mountains or something. And then you can see some almost even taller peaks off in the background.
Yeah, it's great.
At home, we've got The Traveler, Adventures, The Far Lands, The Observer.
This one does, it does scream like adventure, right? Like he is on an epic adventure, I think, right?
Yes. We've even got like Shipwrecked. Like you can really invent a backstory for this. It makes you want to write a story.
Yes.
The beginning, I love that. The beginning.
He has wrecked his ship and he's climbed to the highest peak to get a view to see where he should go next. And he's probably a little bit daunted by what he sees. Right? He's like, oh my gosh, I got a long ways to go. It's the start of an adventure story.
It makes you wonder, he could see it as that he just finished summiting something, or he's just about to start off on something. What's your title, Luke?
Mine is Top of the World. And I like this one because it makes me think of one of my favorite parts of being a scout, which were all the hikes. And then we often in Tennessee, there's some hills, and we would get to the top of a hill and we stop and we take a break and we just look out over the landscape from way on the top. And I love those moments. And this painting reminds me of those moments.
Luke, who's the artist? Is this Norman Rockwell also?
It is not Norman Rockwell. Thank you for asking, Aaron. This artist is one of my favorite artists who lived 200 years ago, and he is a German artist named Caspar David Friedrich. Caspar David Friedrich.
Cool.
Interesting.
That's awesome. So it's interesting, like you said before, 200 years old, and you said he's German, and yet it's still, there's something about it that still kind of resonates with you, right? And you can look at that and you can see something of your own experience. That's kind of what art is, right? That's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we have about 5 more minutes for this game, and then we are going to be welcoming Joey Ellis on the show to show us how to draw. He is the illustrator for Lion Pride. I also really wanted to mention Sheena's title for this, which is How Am I Getting Down?
Difficult path.
Love it.
Perfect.
Okay, so should we do a few more?
Oh, yeah.
I think so.
All right.
This is cool. This reminds, this is kind of a little bit spookier, I think, right, Gina? Do you agree?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. There's something about trees with no leaves on them at night that is just inherently a little bit creepy. And then there's that, that door or that gate that is almost freestanding all by itself. What's on the other side? So if I were, and it looks like there's even a hint in the sky there of the moon or a crescent moon or something like that way off in the distance.
Oh, good eye.
Maybe that's just a fleck on my screen. I don't know. But if I was titling this, I would go with something like Time for Scary Stories or Story Time or Creepy Story Time, or something like that maybe.
Oh, that's a good one. I was just going to call it maybe like At Dusk.
Great.
I don't even know if that's dusk, but I'm taking a guess.
It could be dusk or dawn maybe, right? Yeah.
We've got a lot of graveyard mentions in the comments.
Yeah.
Because, you can't.
It was a graveyard, yeah.
Yeah. The ancient ruins, the graveyard, haunted ruins. If walls could talk, that's a good one.
Ooh.
Scooby-Doo Zombieland.
Sure.
Spooky burnt down forest.
So, very literal. See, that's good. Very literal there.
One more, An End of the World.
It does kind of, to me, convey a sense of aloneness and isolation a little bit. It just looks like there's nobody there,
Luke, what's your title for this, and how did it come to mind with related to scouting?
I'm going to call it The Creepy Place. and sometimes, you're out camping and the fire starts to go out and you hear noises in the woods and suddenly things start to get a little bit creepy and scary, but it's still fun. It's a fun experience to be a part of, even though it's kind of creepy and scary. Those were moments I really enjoyed too as a scout.
Those are some of the best parts of a camp out right there.
We're definitely getting that vibe too with the comments. I think that our youth viewers are loving this. Spooky, Scary Skeletons is coming out. More Scooby-Doo titles are coming out. Very cool. Okay, let's see our next one.
More, or do we
I think let's finish this up. We've got 2 more. Let's do it.
I like it. Here we've got.
Well, I'll just go right off the bat and say I want to call it Pixie Sticks because it looks a little like she's eating a pixie stick.
I believe that, Gina, that I'm going to interpret it a different way. I believe that she's playing some sort of instrument, some sort of woodwind, I don't remember, a recorder type thing. And her little friend there, maybe her little sister is watching almost, I'm going to say kind of admirably, like you look at the way she's looking in her eyes, like she's like, that's really cool. I'm going to say, I'm going to go with sisters, big sister and little sister, just because I feel like they are,
They're getting along very well for sisters.
Right.
It was a rare moment. So at home, people are agreeing with you, Aaron. They're saying the sisters, best friends. Ocean view, that's interesting. You can kind of see that in the background potentially.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Honey by the seashore.
Mm.
Licorice flute. We're on the same page. Fairy dust. I like that. I could see kind of a fairy element or angelic element to this.
Right. Yep. Right.
What do you think, Luke?
I'm going to call it beautiful music, beautiful friend. And It makes me think of times when I was in Scouts where I would spend time with friends and they would do something that I was really interested in what they were doing. Whether it was maybe I'm learning how to tie knots and I'm looking at how well they're tying knots. Or I think I remember somebody had a harmonica that they would play. But just the enjoyment of spending time with somebody and admiring what it is that they enjoy doing. And so there's that closeness, that friendship that I remember from Scouts that I really enjoy, that I see in this painting.
Yeah, I like that a lot. That's what Scouts is all about, the friendships. And I'm glad that's the thing you remember from it, because that's what we think hopefully kids take from it. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have one more before we queue up Joey Ellis for his illustration. I can't wait to see what's up next. Oh,
so
this is a little mischief.
And this is perfect. They have been, this is so great. Talk about telling a story, because the sign says no swimming, and these guys have clearly been swimming. So they clearly are, shall we say, bending the rules a little bit. And I think they just got caught, or else they're trying to get away before they get caught. I'm going to go with something like up to no good, or mischief time, or something like that. And I love the little dog down there who's running away with him just because he wants to. Yeah.
That's where my eyes go. So I was going to say like maybe Dog Days of Summer or something. Because they're also like dogs. They're breaking the rules.
It tells a story of a group of kids who they're not indoors playing their Xbox. They've been kicked out of the house by their parents. Their parents said, go out and have fun. They came across a perfectly good swimming hole, and they didn't care there was a sign that said no swimming. Gosh darn it. They're going to go swimming. And
they were following the rules.
Yes. I'm not sure if they got caught and they're running away, or if they're just like, they got in real quick and now they're just getting out real quick before they get caught. Either way, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I would bet on these kids getting away with it too. They look fast. So kids running from trouble, pool party busted. That one's good. Kicked out of the pool. Pool time busting. The rule breakers. That one's a good one.
That's good.
They're all good. The trespassers.
Yep.
In trouble.
Sums
That's
it up
pretty good.
Yep.
What do you call this one, Luke?
Well, Gina, it's very similar to something you mentioned, mischief. And I like that, because sometimes I would get into mischief. I would do something I wasn't sure, it was with friends, not quite sure whether or not we should be doing this, but we're thinking it's going to be fun. So we go ahead and do it. And sometimes we get in trouble and sometimes we get away with it. But I think maybe part of being a scout is just a little bit of mischief to add some fun and some bonding with friends.
Yeah, you're like learning the rule. You're learning the ways of life. That's part of Scout. So I love it. I loved those paintings. That was a very awesome. that was so much classier than the way Aaron and I would have started this off. I mean, we're so lucky to have you here.
We got so many good ideas from our people watching. That was really cool too. They really came through for us. That was great.
You guys have so many good titles. We'll definitely be continuing to read those and commenting along. I've loved reading these. So thanks for tuning in. Guys, the fun is about to begin. If you have been on the edge of your seat wanting to draw, if you have Photoshop in a computer, you can try to go along with Joey to start this video. And then at the end, he's going to do a pencil and paper drawing. Just a reminder, this video will stay on Facebook after it's live, so you can go back, join in on Joey's creation later. Save whatever you create today. Make sure to show it to your merit badge counselor or your parents, or stick it on the fridge. Do something with it. Without further ado, we'll show you Joey's tutorial, and then we'll all be back, plus Joey, after the video, and he can answer any questions you have. And same thing with Luke. He's art appreciator aficionado. He's an art expert. So you guys have experts to talk to today after we do a little demo.
I'm going to go grab my pencil and paper, Gina. I'm excited about this. I'm ready to go.
Okay.
Hi kids, my name is Joey Ellis, and I am an illustrator and designer here in Charlotte, North Carolina. Now, one of the cool jobs that I get to do is make comics for Boys Life magazine. There it is right there, Lion Pride. It is one of the best comics that has ever been in Boys Life, according to my mom. And one of the other cool things that I get to work on are graphic novels. And my newest graphic novel is called Wolfie Monster and the Big Bad Pizza Battle from our friends at Scholastic. And the main character right here is this little blue guy called Wolfie Monster. So today I thought I would teach you how to draw Wolfie Monster. So before you draw anything, you kind of have to have an understanding of what the subject matter looks like. So we've got this little statue called a maquette that shows exactly what Wolfie looks like. So you'll notice that he's got one big eye and two big teeth and lots of blue fur and purple arms and pink legs. So if you look at Wolfie, you'll start seeing some shapes. You see the circle there. Then you kind of have maybe this triangle lampshade shape. And I don't know what kind of shape his legs are. Can hot dogs be a shape? They're hot dog shapes. How about that? Then you have his arms. And so what we're going to do today is I'm going to teach you how to draw Wolfie. And we're going to draw him using a technique called symmetry. Now, we're going to use my machine over here. I've got my big computer up here, and then I have my big monitor right here, which allows me to draw directly into the computer, which is super duper cool. So come on, let's dive into Photoshop and let's start drawing. If you just want to watch, that's fine too, because later on we're going to do some more drawings with real pencil and paper that you can follow along with. So remember, a symmetrical drawing means whatever happens on one half of the page is mirrored on the other half of the page. So the first thing we have to do is divide our page in half. So we'll just drag this little guide out. Now our page is divided in half. So I'm only going to draw on this side of the page, and then we're going to flip it, and you'll see how our drawing is going to come to life. Photoshop works in layers. So imagine if layers were like invisible sheets of paper on top of your original sheets of paper. So we're going to start on a new layer. Now, Wolfie's shape is very, very simple. His head, we're just going to start off with, is just basically a big circle. So his torso is kind of this lampshade shape. His arm is kind of this big, kind of like a hot dog. Okay, now his leg just kind of sticks out here, just two straight lines like that. And then see this hot dog shape like that? That's what his toes look like, but they're a little bit smaller. So he has two toes right here and then 1/3 toe back there. And then his legs have these lines, just like that. We have this drawing on this layer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate it. So see how now I have two layers. I'm going to take this layer and flip it horizontally. Look at that. And then drag it into place. Let's start to clean up our drawing a little bit more. Now, this particular layer is at 100% opacity. That means it's really easy to see. If we decrease the opacity, that means it's harder to see, right? So it's lighter and lighter and lighter. Let's bump it up to about 40% opacity, because what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do a new drawing and trace over what I've already built. So we've got a new layer. Come back in with my pencil, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit. That's one of the other cool things about drawing digitally, is that you can really zoom in on your drawings. So we're going to trace over that, right? I'm just kind of coming in and fixing up his shape, right? Still going to flip it later, so I don't have to worry about drawing on this side. Let's draw his arm. Let's give it a little bit of a bend, right? Because his elbow would be right in there, I guess. Now, the other thing that we can do with his arm is let's put a hand on the end of it. I know hands are hard to draw, but the more you draw and the more practice you get, the easier they get. Wolfie's hands are very, very simple. All it is just the letter U. See, it's an upside down letter U. Now, just like with your hand, you've got a bit of space in between your thumb and your pointer finger. So that space is about like that. And let's put his pointer finger, middle finger, and then his pinky finger. And lucky for us, Wolfie only has 3 fingers. Okay, we're going to come back in there, and his foot's pretty much the same. Draw his toe, his big toe, and then his back toe. There we go. Now, I don't like how close that is. I can bring out this thing called the lasso tool. It looks like a whole bunch of ants on the screen. I can actually take that and kind of scale that in just like that. Get it the exact size I want it. Now, you can't do this with a real piece of paper, right? Again, this is one of the advantages of working digitally. All right, let's go ahead and get his little segments put in. Now he's also, if you remember what he looks like, he's got 3 layers of these kind of scallop shapes. So we're just going to kind of rough that in right now. Let's make his head just a little bit bigger. And I don't like this space right here. It's a bit much. So we're actually going to move his arm up just a bit. Let's get our lasso tool out. Just going to move it up just a little bit. See? Isn't that cool? All right. So let's do the exact same thing that we did earlier. Let's duplicate that layer, flip it horizontally, get it into place, and then let's see what we've got. We can actually take this original layer away. Remember how we knocked the original one back in opacity, the original sketch we did back in opacity? We're going to do the exact same thing here, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to trace over what I have drawn here and start adding in detail. So let's knock this back. Now remember, we were drawing in purple. I just picked purple because I liked purple. You can draw in any color that you want. I'm now going to change colors, and it doesn't matter what color I use. We can use a hot pink. The reason that I change colors when I'm sketching digitally is that I like to kind of see what was the old drawing versus the new drawing. So you can imagine if I drew everything in one color, it might, especially if I'm working in all these layers and I'm constantly tracing over my work, it might get real muddy as far as like, well, what was new and what was old, I can't remember. If I draw in colors, that helps me to remember, okay, that was the new drawing versus the old drawing. So I'm going to clean his hand up real quick. So let's come in here. Oops, make sure I'm on the right layer. Let's come in here. Let's clean his hand up just a little bit. Now we're going to put this little shape right here, which indicates kind of his palm. Let's go ahead and add in his scallops, right? And it's okay if it's messy because we're gonna trace it again. I do a lot of tracing. I do a lot of refining. So we've drawn some scallops right there. Let's add it again right here. Let's add it again right here. Now you'll notice what we're doing here is we're adding a lot of variety to the drawing. I think this is really important in character design because, you know, if you're doing a comic book, you want to make sure that your character's actions are very easy to read on the page. So imagine if Wolfie was all the same shape and all the same color and had all the same textures, it would be a really bland character. It would be really hard to tell what he was doing. So Wolfie's face has just one big eyeball. And again, we're not worried about this half of the drawing. We're only going to draw on this half of the drawing because we're going to duplicate it again and we're going to flip it. So Wolfie has his cheek, he has his eyeball, he has his mouth, and it's just all circles. And look, I mean, that's the letter C, that's the letter U, that's an O, right? He's also kind of got a horn right there. I'm actually going to I'm going to get my lasso tool. I'm going to move his mouth up just a little bit. I want it a little bit closer. There we go. He's got a tooth right there, which is kind of the same shape as his horn. And I'm going to open his mouth. So that's his bottom lip. and then the bottom part of his lip sticks out over his scallops, right? So let's finish his head right there. Let's add his pupil. Okay. So see how the pink part shows me what the new drawing is, and the purple part was the old part of the drawing. All right, so we're going to do the exact same thing that we did before. Let's duplicate that layer. Let's flip it horizontally. And let's move it into place. There we go. That's not bad at all. So for this last part, what I'm going to do is I kind of want to get rid of this guide right here because I'm kind of done with the symmetrical part. So I can actually come up here into Photoshop and say, hey, get rid of my guides. And let's just choose blue. So I'm just going to add in the last little details of Wolfie. So he's got a little tuft of hair right there. His horns kind of stick out like that. And I'm just kind of suggesting where his fur goes right now. And I'm going to do one more drawing on top of this that kind of cleans it all up. So I'm going to come in with my black pencil. And let's make it a little bit bigger. 15 pixels is probably pretty good. One of the really nice things too about working digitally is you can zoom way in on your drawing, which you can't really do with a real piece of paper. So all I'm doing is just tracing over. All right, let's go ahead and fill in his mouth. There's his pupil. All right, let's get his scallops in there. I think doing a symmetrical drawing is a really smart way to design a character. Like if you're just trying to get some ideas down on the page very, very quickly, a symmetrical drawing is nice because remember, you're only having to draw half of it. Okay, so let's take away all of these underlying sketches, and that's our Wolfie drawing. Now, his head's a little big, so one of the things I can do is kind of come in with my lasso tool. And if I want to, I can shrink that down just a little bit. Okay. So our lines are a little bit messy in there. And so I can just kind of come in and fix it with my pencil. I can erase, I can redraw. So one of the things I noticed is that this side of Wolfie's face is real flat, and this side is real full. I like this side much better than this side. So I'm actually going to take my lasso tool. Oops, make sure I'm on the right layer. I'm going to take my lasso tool and actually get rid of this half of his face and come in and add. I'm going to take this side and I'm going to flip it around and move it into place. Make sure it's exactly the way I want it. There we go. Much better. We can come back in and fix that. There we go. Perfect. You know, we talked about the variety of Wolfie's design. He's got these scallop shapes. He's got these kind of segmented shapes. He's got this big fur ball on the top, and then he's got his arms. So visually, his body parts are very, very visually distinct. And the reason that's important is that if you think about comics, a lot of times characters will appear very, very small. And so you have to be able to read their actions at a very small scale. The other thing that helps with variety is color. Wolfie has blues, purples, and pinks. And each part of his body uses a very different color palette so that it's easy to distinguish what he's doing on the page. So his head is a light blue and his middle scallop is a light blue. These two scallops, the top scallops and the bottom scallops, are a darker blue. His arms are purple and then his legs are pink. So first off, let's go ahead and just select a light blue and a dark blue. And we don't have to be very precise. We can just select colors that look nice. So let's start off, let me get a big pencil here. Let's go with like 40 pixels. Okay, there we go. Almost done with that. Okay, we need to select a pink for Wolfie's cheeks, his tongue, and his legs. Now, in his books, we all have we use very specific colors when we're coloring him on the page. But for today, we can just use approximate colors. What I mean by that is we're just guessing. This looks pretty good. Okay. When I designed Wolfie, I chose his colors very carefully because I wanted to make sure that, you know, if his leg was somehow in front of his body, you could tell that it was in front of his body because his body is blue and his leg is pink. Same thing with his little stripes. I wanted to make sure that his head was separate from his body by this dark blue. So you have a light blue, a dark blue, a light blue, and a dark blue. Kind of have a rhythm going on there. Wolfie's arms are kind of this cool purple. So again, you know, you can imagine if Wolfie is holding something in front of himself, it's easy to see that on a comic page because his arms and his hands are purple and nothing else on his body is purple, right? So there you go. There is our symmetrical Wolfie drawing.
All of the stuff that I showed you in Photoshop, we can do the exact same thing here with just a number 2 pencil, a Sharpie, and an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. And honestly, it doesn't even have to be 8.5 by 11. It can be any size you want. You just need to be able to see through it, because we're going to use a light table. And if you don't have a light table, you can just use a sunny window. But you have to be able to see through the paper. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our piece of paper and we're going to fold it in half. And we're just going to do a drawing on this side. Now, I'm going to start off with my pencil and draw very lightly, and then later clean it up with my Sharpie. Here's our piece of paper, folded it in half. And what we're going to do is we're going to draw half of our character on one side, and then we're going to trace it on the other side, open up the piece of paper, and you're going to have a full drawing. So I thought it would be funny to do like a real silly little Bear Scout. So just going to start off with maybe his head. And again, very, very lightly, I'm just going to draw his eye. And you can follow along with me if you'd like. And you can also just do your own drawing. So there's his hat. Okay, there's his ear. There's his little eye. Okay, very, very rough. That's okay. All right, very round body. Okay, there's his foot. Right there. Socks. He's got a little sneaker on. And then let's just draw kind of like a wolfy arm. We'll just draw an arm like that. Let's give him a sleeve. And let's give him fingers, right? And because he's a bear, he's going to have maybe some fatter fingers. And let's draw his little paw pads, right? There we go. All right, so he's a scout. So let's draw in his little collar and his little neckerchief. Okay, there's his neckerchief, right? And actually, let's make sure his neckerchief goes around his neck, kind of above his collar. Some of our scouts like to wear their neckerchief above their collar. Some of them like to wear it under their collar. Do that. Let's give him his belt, right? And then let's clean up his uniform. Okay, so there's one half of his belt buckle, right? Okay. So I'm going to bear down a little harder with my pencil so I can see these lines. Okay. Here we go. Okay. So there's one half of our drawing. Okay, so this is our light box. And this is, it almost looks like an iPad, but it really is just a big fancy piece of plexiglass, and it has like a little LED inside that lights it up. This was not that expensive. I believe I got this on Amazon for maybe $10 a couple years ago, and they have different sizes. So this is actually not that expensive. However, if you've got a big window and it's a nice sunny day, you can take your drawing and tape it up to the window. Make sure you use something like a blue painter's tape or something, because this comes off really easily. If you use masking tape or Scotch tape, it might leave residue on the glass, and we don't want to get in trouble with mom and dad for messing up the glass. The light's on. So what we can do is, if you remember, this was the one side of our drawing. Now we're going to flip it over and see how I can see through the page. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and bear down pretty hard, but I'm basically just tracing the other side of our bear character, right? And it doesn't have to be perfect, because what we're going to do is, once I'm done with all of the tracing, I'm going to ink it with my Sharpie. Now, if you don't like your drawing so far, that's totally fine. Do your best to finish it. And remember, it's just a drawing. You can go grab another sheet of paper, right? Get his little paw pads in there. Get his sleeve. Get his little belt buckle in there. All right, we're almost done with this. Oh, you know what we haven't done yet is we haven't drawn his face. Okay, cool. Get that shoe in there. Nice. All right, let's get his eye. Let's see what we're dealing with here. Get his nose. Cool. All right, let's turn off our light table. And let's see. Oh man, are you nervous? I'm nervous. Let's see what our drawing really looks like. Here we go. Hey, look at that. That's not bad at all. So, because we've drawn in pencil, see how his like neckerchief isn't quite together? That's fine. And oh, you know what? We forgot to do the belt buckle. So what we can do is we can take our pencil and just finish up that little spot right there. Take our eraser, right? Let's clean this whole area up. That kind of got messy, didn't it? Let's finish off his chin and let's add a big knot right there. Okay. Cool. I love it. I wonder what his name should be. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, let's get rid of our light table and let's take our Sharpie and let's finish this drawing up. And if you want to use a Sharpie, if you want to use a colored pencil, you can use a crayon, you can do anything you want to do. I'm going to try not to hit the camera with my big head. How about that? Yeah, I can kind of come in. Here we go. Benny the bear, maybe. And remember how we just used that tracing technique. You can trace this drawing again. So take this drawing and put it back up on your sunny window or your light box, and you can clean up the drawing again. Remember how in Photoshop and in Procreate, we kept refining the drawing. You can do that with this too. Just keep tracing, right? And in fact, at Michael's, they even sell tracing paper, and it's really, really thin. And so if you have tracing paper, you really don't even need a sunny day. You can just lay the sheets of paper on top of each other, and it's really, really easy. There we go. And then when you're done with this, you can color it. And do another one. Isn't this cool? So see how that kind of saves time by drawing symmetrically? Isn't that neat? And we don't have to be very precise here. We can just finish in our drawing later the way we really want it and kind of treat this as a sketch. I hope all of your drawings are turning out just as well as this. And if they're not, don't worry about it. Let's give them some freckles, right? Maybe give them a big snout. Maybe some eyebrows. There we go. And there is our symmetrical Bear Scout drawing.
All right, kids, that is it. You are professional artists now. So actually, I have a message from our friend Eric at Boys Life magazine. Let me just check my email right here.
Hey, Joey. Tell the scouts that after they've practiced drawing with you, to go and create their own character. Put it into a comic and send it to Boys Life magazine at go.boyslife.org/myowncomic. We might feature it on boyslife.org. Thanks, Eric at Boys Life magazine.
Wolfie, do you have anything to say? You ready to go get a snack? I figured. All right. Pizza? Yeah? Okay. Thank you guys for watching. Good luck with your art, and I can't wait to see what you create. Bye, guys. Man, that coronavirus beard is coming in strong.
Hey, awesome hat.
Oh, thank you. I don't ever take it off.
Yeah, we could see that.
Nor should
Just
you.
kidding.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was so great. We got a lot of comments. Joey, obviously, he was leading us through those demos. We've still got Luke down at the bottom of the screen. He's our art aficionado. This is their first time meeting right here on Facebook Live, I think.
Hi, Luke, did you punch holes into his window so that he can breathe?
Yes, you mean because he's in the
whatever.
Yeah. Okay, so we got a lot of questions. I know that I have a few comments. You guys might have a few comments. That was awesome. But at first, I got to admit, I didn't ever think about drawing symmetrically, ever. I never would have thought like a professional illustrator is doing that, and it makes so much sense.
Yeah, it's when we do character development, a lot of times, especially if we have to design a whole lot of characters for a story, you can imagine if you were doing a story about an entire family, let's say you've got some parents and some siblings, maybe the dog, something like that. It's drawing symmetrically kind of helps you map out how all of these characters are going to look a lot quicker. And so a lot of times, if I have a lot of characters that need visual design, I will use symmetry and just kind of very quickly determine, are their arms too big? Are their legs too long? Is their head too little? Where are their eyes? And so I use symmetry quite a bit. And I remember being a scout, being 9, 10 years old and learning how to draw. And you can get really, really overwhelmed when, I read Spider-Man and Batman and loved all the Saturday morning cartoons. And you would get really, really overwhelmed with how these professionals would draw. And so as a 10-year-old, it was very frustrating because it's like, I can't draw like that. Why can't I draw like that? And it was because I didn't have the experience yet. And so when I figured out, I think one of my art teachers taught me how to draw symmetrically. It was kind of this opportunity to say, wait a minute, this is a really neat way to kind of like only draw half of a drawing and then trace it and then see what the whole character is going to look like. And so you could kind of see your ideas come to life a lot quicker. So for someone who was very frustrated with their inability to draw, that was a really nice tool to kind of say, oh my gosh, the arms are too big. Let me redraw that really quickly. And I think the other thing you learn from drawing symmetrically is no artist draws anything perfect the very first time. Maybe a select few throughout the history of time. But for the 99% of us, it takes a lot of refining. And you'll notice that in that bear drawing, it was pretty messy. And I used my eraser. And a lot of my lines didn't overlap. And in fact, if you pay attention, a lot of times the lines would retrace over and over again. And it's kind of like, if you've played with Play-Doh, you're kind of mashing that shape into the shape that you want. Drawing's kind of the same way. So anyone out there that's, really enjoys drawing, but might be frustrated that they aren't good enough, just know that it's, think of it like you're sculpting. Think of it like a study. And tracing is awesome. Trace over your own drawing. Trace over other people's drawings and learn how they draw and then apply it to how you want to draw. And so I think that, again, when I was younger, I felt like if I made a mistake, it meant I was not a good artist or I was not a good illustrator. And one of my friends, Eric from Boys Life, knows that he's my editor for Lion's Pride, and he knows firsthand how many mistakes that I make on a monthly basis. So it never goes away. So anyway, just some encouragement out there. Don't worry about mistakes. Don't worry if the drawing that you just did was not very good. You can do another one. I do plenty of bad drawings. Again, you can ask Eric. And you just, as a professional, you move quicker and you don't worry too much about the mistakes. You learn from them, move on, and you keep doing your artwork. So I forgot what your question was, but that was a very long-winded answer.
It was a good answer, no matter what the question was.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned at some point in there, I don't know if Aaron and Luke, you heard it too. You said, even if you don't like how this is turning out, try to finish. Mm-hmm. What's the thought there?
So I think that, I keep a lot of sketchbooks, and a lot of times it's so frustrating. Let's say you're drawing a horse, and let's say you start off, you've drawn the perfect horse face, and then you've drawn the perfect horse body, and then you accidentally made one of the horse legs really fat and the others are skinny, and you've like, no, I'm awful at this, and so you know what, I'm just going to throw this away and go and just give up. And I think the reason why it's so important to finish that really awful horse drawing is go back in and draw the mane, draw the tail, or make fun of your own drawing. And so I think what you learn is if you finish that drawing, one, you get that sense of accomplishment that you have in fact finished something. And a lot of times you never quite know if the next thing you draw might actually inspire a better idea. So if you think back to that horse drawing, if you hadn't gone back in and maybe drawn the mane, horse manes are just as difficult to draw as the face themselves. Hair is very, very difficult to draw. And so if you kind of give up halfway through a drawing, it's kind of like if you're doing math and it was, 2 + 2 = 4, and you got to the 2+ part and you're like, I will never learn this. And then you just walked away. You don't really ever get that sense of, oh, I see now that 2 + 2 = 4. And so I think that's why it's so important to finish your drawings, even if they're terrible. And to be perfectly honest, when you become a super awesome professional like me, you will still do really terrible drawings. And there will be some drawings that are so bad that I'm just like, this is awful. I can't let anybody see this. And I'll just move on to the next drawing.
One of the things that I've learned about art, Gina, in just the last hour is that it's a lot like other stuff we do in life. It's a lot like if you want to be an athlete or if you want to, study, if you want to be a writer or whatever, there's a learning curve. You might make mistakes, and that's okay. One of the best ways to do it is to do it, it seems like, and hopefully you have a teacher or a mentor or somebody you can talk to and get advice from, maybe. Just like everything else.
I imagine Luke looks at the progression of like artists' work from when they started to like when they, towards the ends of their lives. Do you see a big change in the skills of artists, even, professionals, Luke?
I think you're muted, Luke.
All the scouts have to do Luke's voice now.
Yeah, guess what Luke's saying at home.
Well, one of the things I was going to say is, if you think about the Cub Scout program and Boy Scouts as well, I'm a Cub Scout leader, so I know a lot more about Cub Scouting than Boy Scouting. But there's a lot of repetition. So it's like when we have brand new scouts coming in at the Lion level, when they reach that Tiger level, it kind of feels like a repeat of the Lion year with like a few things tacked on. And then the Wolf year is kind of the Tiger year with 1 or 2 things tacked on and so forth. And so by the time you reach that AOL level, all of it feels like you've been doing it over and over and over again. And so Cub Scouting and drawing and writing and sports and anything that you're going to be good at takes a lot of repetition and a lot of just, keep doing the same thing, add a little bit more, and just kind of keep going.
Testing.
Loud
Can you guys hear me? All right, great.
Perfect.
It was really fun to see Joey go through the progression of what he's doing. And this is what all artists do, the famous ones, the artists, Norman Rockwell, Caspar David Friedrich, those artists that I showed before. They start off with sketches, they make mistakes, they change things up. Sometimes they'll spend months and months because they're not happy with what they have. And they constantly look to change it. And that's part of the process of getting what it is that you want, sharing your voice and seeing what it is that you want to say. And I see his mistakes as, I do a little bit of art, not much, but a little bit. But mistakes are experiments. Does that look like what I want it to look like? And maybe not. I'll try something else and see where I go from there. And I really like that you have a couple of different tools, and you use that eraser. And sometimes the eraser is seen as something that you use to get rid of mistakes. But the way I see it is like it's another tool to help you go in the direction you want to go into. Right. Rather than get rid of mistakes, you're progressing in the drawing.
And look, you said something really interesting as well. I think when I was much younger, I used to think that whatever is on the page needs to match exactly what's in my head. And so when I was much younger, that was so difficult because this amazing thing that I had, dreamed up, it doesn't, whatever I've just drawn doesn't look anything like it. It's awful, and I must be terrible. And so as I've gotten older and more experienced, I realized that what's in my head will never, ever match what's on paper, because they're two different things. You have to think you've got your brain talking to your hands. And so you kind of have to imagine that these are like family members. And sometimes when family members talk, one family member has a very distinct idea, and then the other family member is like, well, that's not what I heard at all. And so I think what, if I could go back in time, 5 years ago when I was 15, and tell my younger self is whatever's in your head, it will never, ever look like what's on the paper. And the paper is going to take a life of its own. And so that's why it's so important to sketch, because you kind of want to see, okay, here's my idea. Here's my drawing. Wow, that drawing doesn't look anything like what my idea did, or, it doesn't look anything like what my idea was trying to tell me. But I like this drawing, and now my idea has changed a little bit. So let me redraw it and see if I can kind of mash this new idea and this drawing into something else. And so a lot of times you'll hear people say, like, well, that piece of art took on a life of its own, that kind of thing. And so that's really what that means.
Good perspectives from the experts. As Aaron at home, not the Aaron that we're looking at, although he may feel this way too, points out, horses, as an example, are very hard to draw. That was the example you used. And I was thinking the exact same thing. Like, I remember trying to draw horses as a kid. That's an easy one to get frustrated with, I think. So I'm glad you used that example.
Oh yeah, horses are always very difficult.
You made the statement that bears have fatter fingers. I was just wondering what kind of research you did to come up with that one.
Absolutely none. I just state facts. Well, see, okay, here's the deal. When you become a father for as long as I have, the government sends you a certificate that says whatever you say is fact is fact. And so if I say that bears have fatter fingers, then that's just a fact, and you don't need to go look into the science books or anything. It's just how it is. And maybe tomorrow the bears will have skinnier fingers. It's whatever I'm feeling like at the moment.
Who could argue with that? Actually, a lot of people had some technical questions. So you were sketching on Photoshop, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And you were can you explain what you use, like a stylus or a mouse, or using a touch screen?
Yeah. So let's see. Now you're going to see the rat's nest of the artist, but if you could look behind me, I can't figure out where my camera is. There we go. Where am I? Oh, there's like a bit of a delay. Here we go. So if you look right over here, you can see like I'm actually working on the next issue of Lion's Pride. So no spoilers. It's huge. You can see the big monitor right there, and basically I use like this really plasticky kind of pencil. It looks very similar to this ballpoint pen, but it is not a ballpoint pen. It is a specific stylus. If I were to use this ballpoint pen on that computer screen, I would have to go buy a new computer screen. So I have a monitor that lets me draw directly into the machine, and then it hooks directly into this iMac right there. Now, sometimes I will also use my iPad, which I'm not sure where it is because I was drawing with it yesterday, but it's really, really thin. It's about, the size of a book, and it's a much closer thing to 8.5 by 11. And so it just depends on what I'm doing. Sometimes if I'm here in the office, I want to use my big computer, and then other times if I want to go sit outside or we happen to be on the road or something like that, I'll take the iPad with me. One of the other cool things that I really like about the iPad is that it's a little bit more affordable than the big computer system that I just showed you. And I think that's always a very frustrating thing for younger artists, is that they see all of these tools and like, how on earth can I ever afford any of this stuff? And so that, that's for pretty much any profession, music, sports, anything like that. And it just comes with time. I couldn't afford any of this stuff when I was a scout, and that used to really frustrate me because, I would see all these really cool tools, and it's like all I've got is my pencil and paper, and I can't make the pencil and paper do what I want it to do. And so, but it'll just come with time. The iPad's really nice because it's kind of an all-in-one system. You have to get an iPad Pro because I don't think that any of the other iPads will work with the pencil that they sell. But I like it because it's kind of this like little supercomputer that fits right into your book bag. And I use so Photoshop. I did see a few of the questions about the cost of Photoshop. Yes, Photoshop does cost. And then for Procreate was what I use for iPad. Procreate's I think only like $10, $15, and it is not a reoccurring fee. For someone out there who is might be one of our older scouts who might be really interested in going into art as a career, either with movie making or comics or illustration or something like that, the iPad and Procreate are really great tools to kind of get that semi-professional going into professional artist going on their career.
I'm glad you mentioned that because a lot of our scouts may be able to talk their parents into giving them $10 for a program like that. And I think a lot of teachers who have iPads available for their students could be talked into letting them maybe download something like that on an iPad with their permission, of course. But that's great. And then I know a lot of people in the comments were mentioning different free apps. That's we can't recommend any of those because we don't know exactly what's on them or what they could do to your computer, but there's probably a lot of really good ones. So look through the comments and take a gander, see if there's something you're willing to try.
And hey, I actually got started, for those of you who may remember, I don't even know if this is still a program, but I learned computer, drawing on computer in Microsoft Paint. That was all I had when I was, back in the 90s. So, don't let I know with my boys, if they can't have the best of the best, or they can't have the latest new fancy tool or whatever, they just give up and just walk away. To become an artist, you need a pencil and paper. And if you can't do what you need to do on pencil and paper, like if you cannot come up with ideas and enjoy that process of the pencil and paper, you're never going to enjoy the computer part of it. And I think that would probably go with, again, we keep talking about music and sports and a lot of other professions, but you don't need the big fancy thing to get started. You just need that desire to get better. And, everybody has to earn their stripes and work through all those frustrations of dealing with the tools that you have. So
that makes sense. There's always going to I think there's always going to be a place for like the analog way to do things. So that's a great place to start out with. And it's also the cheap way to start potentially for a lot of, our Cub Scouts out there. I have one more question and then I'll turn it over to Luke and Aaron before we try to wrap things up, see if you guys have questions. But this is actually not a question, it's a comment. It made me think of something Luke had us do earlier. He had us play a game where we would come up with titles for works of art he showed us. And it just called it to mind when you finished your bear sketch and said, I wonder what we should name him. So it's like clearly part of the process for an artist to maybe make a backstory or like a character out of what you're drawing. You kind of become emotionally invested. Does that sound right at all?
Definitely. And I think that, especially in the arts, very rarely do all of these different disciplines live in a vacuum. And what I mean by that is you can be a really good musician and also be a really good writer. And in fact, the best musicians are also very good writers. Or you could be a really good writer and also a really good illustrator or a good photographer or a good sculptor. And so all of these things don't have to be independent. And so, as I've gotten older and had more and more opportunities, you think about the Lion Pride sketch or Lion Pride comic for Boys Life, that requires a lot of writing. And a lot of times, one of the things that I really struggle with is overcomplicating what I'm writing. And so Eric and his team kind of helped me to kind of simplify the words down, and sometimes that affects the actions. And so, you can't just say, I'm going to be a really good illustrator and I don't have to worry about anything else. You kind of have to learn a lot of different disciplines. And so.
Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. Aaron, Luke, do you guys have any questions or closing thoughts for Joey here?
I have two things real quick I wanted to say, and Gina, you mentioned this earlier, but I maybe just wanted to reiterate it for our viewers. If you watched Joey's video and you really enjoyed it, but you feel like maybe you missed something or you want to go back, it will be on the Boys Life Facebook page, I think just a few minutes after we're done, right, Gina?
That's right.
So you can always go back and watch it. You can fast forward, you can pause, tell your friends if you really enjoyed it, tell your friends about it. They can go back and watch it. I know you said that earlier, Gina, but I just want to say that again. And I have a real quick question, number two, for Joey. Since you have experience working with really difficult people like Eric, who I know, I mean, you don't have to tell me about it. I'm just kidding. But one of the things that I've taught the journalism merit badge class before, and one of the things that I tell prospective journalists or writers is that you have to be a team player. People are going to edit your stuff. People are going to make suggestions. People are going to tell you to change things. And for some folks, that's maybe sensitive. So I'm just curious how you, a professional artist, handle that when Eric or any of your other clients maybe come in and say, yeah, this doesn't really work very well, or let's try this or whatever. How do you as a professional handle, I mean, it's kind of criticism, but it's mostly just, suggestions, right? Or tasks or whatever.
Right. I think a lot of times it's, you have to remember that whenever, and I relate this to my boys when they really struggle with writing. And so their teacher is always trying to give them edits to make to their writing. And
Right.
so with my youngest son, she's not trying to say that he's a bad writer. She's trying to give him little hints and clues to say, this is going to improve your writing because we're going to be working together to make what you are creating better than what you could create on your own. And so a lot of times, I think we have feedback on every single comic that I do. And sometimes it'll be very minor things. And other times it might be very drastic things. And so there have been a few times where if it was something very drastic, I might push back and just kind of say, hey, what's the reason behind this? And kind of come up with, why are you responding this way? And let me make sure that I've explained myself clearly. And, it's never, this is probably pretty good advice for all of us, and we all struggle with it, I'm sure, but it's never a good thing to always think that you're right all the time, even though I am. It's,
I am too.
Me too.
Yeah. And so I think that the best I can say is when you've worked with someone, I think we're now in year 3 of Lion Pride. Eric will have to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're into year 3. And you just kind of get that relationship where it's just like you kind of know exactly their tone of voice, you know exactly where they're coming from. And you're hopeful that what you're submitting is exactly, by now, I think we've done 30 of them, somewhere around there. It's like, gosh, by number 30, I hope that I'm delivering things that they are expecting. But, it's just, you always want to make sure that, you don't really get emotional with change. And, I will say this, and I'll stop talking. Whenever I get a piece of feedback that makes me really mad, the best thing, or upset, I don't mean mad like I'm going to have a temper tantrum, but maybe upset or frustrated, or you walk away and you don't respond immediately and you go off. And I've got my dog, and so lots of times our scouts will see me walking the dog around, and most of them are like, I waved at you and you didn't wave back, and it's because I'm trying to mull over some bit of feedback that I got. And so I will say, every single time I've gotten really not necessarily hurt but frustrated by criticism, every single time I go and take a walk and maybe have a snack and go do something else, and I come back, whatever I was mad about, I've forgotten, or I'm not that mad about it anymore. And again, you definitely have to be that team player and realize that we're all trying to make the best, as far as Boys Life goes, we're trying to make the best magazine that we can make together. So anyway.
That's very good life advice. And you also, just before that, called to mind that I think I figured out what your secondary artistic talent is, voiceovers, because I think we heard, if anybody at home can believe it, that was not Eric's voice. It sounded like
he
it.
He sounds just like that. Just this old salty Viking man. He's that guy, that image with the old man pointing at the globe. That's Eric, boys and girls.
yeah, like vaguely European, but nobody knows exactly where in Europe he's from.
Sure.
Gina?
Yes.
I've got a quick comment and then a question for Joey, if we have time.
Yes, go for it.
So, I'm the experience of watching you do the drawing with such ease was making me recall one of those 5 artworks that we went through at the beginning, and I'm wondering if anybody can guess which one that was. Anybody in the chat? But as I was looking, I was like, "Wow, this is really cool!" And it's just amazing. There's a character that just appeared there, and so it makes me think of. I'm curious if anybody's picking up on it. The girl
Aaron,
playing
do
the
you have a
flute.
guess?
Oh, I just gave. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
No, that's good.
Yeah, the flute player, and her friend looking at the flute player, and so that's. I got a chance to kind of experience that moment there, just watching you lead that demonstration, Joey. So the question I have for you, Joey, is I really like that Eric offered up that opportunity for everybody to create their own character. So. That's really exciting. That's ideas started floating in my mind about what kind of character would I create. And so, Joy, question for you is: if you were to go about creating a new character yourself, how would you go about it? What would you think about?
Well, in comics, you've got to come up with a design that's very easy to draw. And so you'll notice if you go back to the beginning of, and the reason that I chose Wolfie instead of some of the other characters is that Wolfie is very simple. He's basically a circle, like I said earlier, he's a circle with a lampshade and hot dog legs and arms. And so that's very easy to draw over and over and over again. And so you kind of have to think, if you look at early Mickey Mouse drawings, he was designed very, very simply so that as people were figuring out how to make these cartoons, they did not want a very cumbersome, complicated design. They needed someone with very ropey arms and spherical hands and, just a circle for a face and stuff like that. So that'd be the first thing is what kind of shapes can I start to put together that inspire me and that will be easy to draw over and over and over again. Now this is in relation to comics and it relates to animation. But just kind of think about is there a personality that's just very natural to you? Do you have, when mom and dad get angry at you, or maybe you do something really good in school and you kind of have that very boastful voice in your head. And if we admit we all have these conversations and these voices in our head, what do those voices start to look like? And can you maybe combine some of these attitudes or these feelings that you have, and then put a little voice to it? And then, maybe there's I saw some of the comments earlier about Steven Universe. It's totally fine to base characters off of cartoons that you really like. I grew up with The Muppet Show and I love Jim Henson and his monster designs. And so that was a huge inspiration to Wolfie in his book. And then with Lion Pride, I'm a huge fan of Jim Davis and Garfield, and it's totally fine. It kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about you can trace over other people's work and learn how they draw it and apply those skills to whatever it is you're creating. And so when you're creating characters, it's just kind of this, I don't know, sometimes it'll be a funny voice in your head. Sometimes it'll just be this, weird shape that you start to think about. And I don't know. That's why I think it's so important to keep a sketchbook and kind of, don't worry about if these drawings are so, super precious. And if you think about our horse drawing that we messed up, where it was, he's got 4 legs, but one of them is really fat. Maybe that's a character. Maybe he becomes everyone teases him because he's I really want to race, but I can't because of this huge hot dog leg. He's Gary the horse with gout or something. I don't know. Eric, you and I can workshop that for the next Boy's Life. It'll be amazing. So anyway.
That's awesome. So inspiration for you has come from a lot of different places. You're still inspired by different artists. And if you at home were inspired by Joey's art today or just sketching along with him, we have a URL it was just at the bottom of the screen. It's on it again. I love the placement. It's right over Aaron's face. It is a place you can send your comics. We'd love to share them on our website. We'd love to see what you've got. We'll show them to Joey just if you want to illustrator to take a look at them. He'll view them. No promises on anything beyond that. But
I'd love
the URL, great. The URL is go.boyslife.org/myowncomic. And that's it. And for anybody who is drawing along today, send your comics in. If you are Scouts BSA age and you sketched along today, be sure to save your sketch and tune in every day this week at 2 p.m. Central. We'll be doing different media for sketching. And by the end of the week, you should have 4 different media of sketches to show your merit badge counselor. So thanks to everybody on screen right now. We really appreciate the couple hours of your day. Any closing thoughts, anybody?
I'm ready to go to the
There
Enjoy
you
art.
have it.
I say go out and
Beach,
draw.
art.
If you're interested, go out and draw. That's how you do it.
Yes.
Start
Yeah.
drawing.
Love it. Okay,
yeah,
well, we'll see
I think-
everybody.
Oh, sorry.
Go
I was
for
going to say, I think that's really great advice. Like, don't wait to become great at something, and don't wait until, like I said, you have the really fancy tools. Like, just start making whatever it is that's in your head, and just keep going.
I love it. Thank you, Joey. Thank you, Luke. Thank you, Aaron. We'll see everybody at 2 p.m. Central tomorrow to draw again.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.